All right, guys. So today I'm going to talk about what the Milwaukee Bucks can do in the off-season, this coming off-season, to keep Giannis. Now, it's going to require a lot to keep Giannis. Giannis is a super duper star, right? And it's Milwaukee. I mean, no disrespect to Milwaukee as a city, but it's not like LA or New York, okay? The attention is not on Milwaukee unless someone like Giannis is balling out, all right? Milwaukee have not been very relevant since Oscar Robertson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar days, okay? Um, they've had some good moments with the Brandon Jennings and Andrew Bogut's Bucks. I remember the Brandon Jennings rookie season was awesome, right? But to keep Giannis, who is, a generational talent, they need to do the right thing this offseason. They need to keep getting talent. Now, they've done a pretty good job of getting Eric Bledsoe, Khris Middleton. They got Khris Middleton well, I like Brandon Knight. They got Khris Middleton for Brandon Knight a little while ago, right? For some reason, they're paying... Piss off. God, Steam's annoying. For some reason they cut Mirza Tiletovic, so they're paying him $10.5 million to not play, even though he's a quality player, good rebounder, good shooter. Okay, he can move his feet a bit offensively. Picking up Brook Lopez was a masterstroke this year, and that could really propel them into contention in the East. Right? Not sure about their drafts. Dante Divincenzo, he had some good times in the NCAA tournament, right? But what he brings to the table is not on the same level as, say, Bruce Brown. Look at Bruce Brown's impact on the Pistons. Awesome defender, playmaker, can shoot the ball. Divincenzo a bit less so. So they need to be drafting correctly, and I'll talk a little bit about what I think they should be doing in that regard. But I'll also talk about the off-season moves in terms of free agency. So the Bucks will be going into the off-season with about this much cap allocated. Okay, now it does depend on what Khris Middleton does. But it's basically 100% chance that he's going to decline this $13 million player option. He's an all-star. He should be expecting around the $20 million range a year, if not more. Okay, so assume that he's off the books. All right. So we've got around, what's 110 mil is the cap. Let's think about how we can get a good team together that's under the cap potentially. Now we're going to go over the cap, and I'll go into those details more because we want to re-sign guys like Eric Bledsoe. He's a free agent, all right? Super talented guy, fits well with Giannis, okay? We need to re-sign him. We need to re-sign Middleton too. These guys are impact players. You can be really good players on contending teams. Mirotic is okay. I don't mind Mirotic. We've got to figure out. So I haven't really researched what the Bucks gave up to get Mirotic. I'll just have a quick look. Okay, so basically the Bucks gave up a couple of second-round picks, which I'm not a fan of, especially because Mirotic could just be a rental. A second-round pick, like you can get an all-star in the second round. All right, if you're picking well. And there are guys that I rate really highly on the draft board that no one is talking about in the first round. So chances are you can pick up a really good guy. Darius Bazley, great talent. He might fall to the second round because he didn't play college. All right. Who else? I'll have to just have a quick look. We've got Charles Bassey. He might not get picked in the first round, but he's a really dominant old school center who, will still has value in the NBA. I think it's talked about a little bit too much about you need, switchability and stuff. Why don't you just don't switch, right? You still need an anchor inside. Brook Lopez is an impact player and he's a big plodding guy, right? Charles Bassey has proven that he's got a bit of a jumper too. So those are the two rookies that I think the Bucks should target. But then there's other guys, other guys that aren't talked about that much. I'll just jog my memory a little bit about some of the other guys who should be considered in the NBA draft. All right, Jarrey Foster out of SMU, freak athlete, great shooter, can attack off the bounce, defend multiple positions. No one's talking about him even being drafted, but Jarrey Foster, I think, is a guy who should be a lottery pick. A guy like Jack White out of Duke, Omer Yurtseven out of Indiana. Mac McClung, I think he's an early first-round pick, potentially. And then you got Kyle Guy out of Virginia. Trey Jefferson, he's like a YouTube sort of star, but he played for a small college. But Trey Jefferson, a 5'7" guy, but he's an absolutely electric scorer. A Miles Powell, he's a bit like a Brad Beal type. All these guys can all be picked up. They might go undrafted, right? But if you can pick them up in the draft, then that's huge. Okay, so giving away a second-round pick for a rental of Mirotic, maybe if you win the ring this year, but I don't think Mirotic really moves the needle all that much. All right. Anyway, so let's talk about what needs to be done. So we're just looking at the salary cap situation. So Middleton is going to test free agency undoubtedly. So before the draft, because you want to have as much flexibility for the draft and get any trades away that might involve picks, all right? Because picks are way more valuable if the draft is coming up in a month than they are in a year and a month, right? So let's get any trades. Let's get some of these trades off the books. Let's get some of these contracts off the books. The only contract that I think is so egregious in terms of the difference between what you're paying and what the value is unfortunately George Hill. Now, I think he's can be maybe fifth or sixth best guy on a championship team, but $18 million, like that's borderline all-star money. Okay, so I'd be trying to move him. Now, this might seem crazy, but I think that someone like the Charlotte Hornets might want to take him on. There's a high potential that Kemba will leave the Hornets in free agency because they just haven't really shown much in terms of building around him. Okay, and to come and play with Giannis would be huge for him. Okay, so I'm thinking a George Hill trade to the Hornets for Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. So the Hornets will see that they get a replacement starting point guard to potentially replace Kemba, or just play off the ball with him, because I suppose at this stage they think that they might be able to re-sign Kemba. Okay. And they might not value Michael Kidd-Gilchrist because, shooting is such a premium in the league, but I think Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is still worth his contract. I think he can defend multiples of positions. He's a good feel for the game offensively in terms of cutting, really good intensity on the board. So he still provides like a Tony Allen type impact offensively, just with some of the smaller things that you can do. You can set picks and stuff, and then defensively he's an impact player too, and he can get out in transition. So let's assume that this George Hill for Michael Kidd-Gilchrist trade goes through. Obviously if you're a fan of either of those teams, you should just leave some comments, see whether that trade is ridiculous or not. But that's just my opinion. I think that is realistic to go down. So let's assume that we're cutting $8 million off the $8 million off the payroll, because Michael Kidd-Gilchrist's contract is only $10 million as opposed to George Hill's $18 million. Okay. So that's getting good value back, and it means that you can spend another $8 million on a true impact player. Okay. So when we're looking at the draft, sorry, I forgot to mention. So yeah. Oh, did I mention it? Anyway, so the Bucks gave up a second-round pick to get Mirotic this year, which I'm not a fan of, because if they did have their first-round pick, which will be very late first round, they are keeping that because there was a condition in there that they'd give their pick to the Suns if it was a lottery pick. Obviously, the Bucks aren't in the lottery, so they're going to keep that pick. And then they also have a second rounder from the Kings. So that'll be around probably the 45th mark. So let's assume that they've got the 30th pick as a top seed, and they've got the 45th pick, which is the Kings second rounder. Okay, so those two picks, I think you'll be able to get a guy like Darius Bazley. Okay, we've got to have a look at different mocks. There is a chance that Bazley and Bassey will actually be gone by 30th. But even if not, you can still get an impact player in Jarrey Foster, Jack White, as I mentioned, Mac McClung, all these guys, high impact players, okay? But yeah, so we picked those guys up, all right, in the draft, okay? I wouldn't be trading them because what they're super cheap contracts for high impact players. Okay, so let's assume we've got Giannis, Snell, Ilyasova, Wilson, Divincenzo, Hawes is gone, and Connaughton and Christian Wood on the payroll. Now we do have to make a decision about Sterling Brown. I don't think I would retain him, I'm afraid. I think he is a end of the bench NBA player. Like, he's an NBA player, but I don't think I think we can better use that roster spot on someone else. All right. So we've got these guys. So we've got a fair few roster spots left. So what can we do in free agency? So here I'm going to go through my NBA free agency big board just to see the hierarchy of the free agents available. So basically, if I was the general manager, I'd be going through this order as a priority. But as the Bucks, we've got to be realistic about who we can get. Is Kevin Durant going to leave the Warriors to sign with the Bucks? And besides, we might not have the cap space. Okay, so remember, $8 million is cut off here, so $78 million. That's a borderline max slot. Okay, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to get Kevin Durant, DeMarcus Cousins, Harrison Barnes, Klay Thompson, Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, the Mavericks are likely going to match whatever Porzingis is offered. But here's Kemba. Okay, Kemba, he realizes how easy it is to win in the East. Okay, he's carrying the Hornets really. But as I mentioned, the Hornets have struggled to put serious talent around Kemba. Although I love their pick of Miles Bridges, but the coach is giving minutes to Jeremy Lamb and Nicholas Batum over Miles Bridges. So I'm just not sure about the future there. So I think Kemba might leave in free agency to join Giannis. Okay, so this is what I'd pay Kemba. Now he's probably going to ask for more, but this is how much I would pay him. I think he's worth about $18 million a year. So let's have him for 3 years. A 3 or 4 year contract for him. He's such a big impact player that you want to keep him around for that long. But that contract could go into like the $25 million range, which I think is fair enough. A bit of an overpay, but I think that's a good option. All right. Now remember, the Bucks do have the bird rights on guys like Middleton, Mirotic, Lopez. I think Lopez is going to be gone from the Bucks. I think he's going to be offered a huge contract somewhere else. Okay, he's a 3-point shooting center who can dominate in the boards and defend the rim and stuff. Like, he's going to get a massive contract. I think I haven't updated this board properly because I think he's going to get around $24-25 million a year, which I don't think the Bucks can really afford. Okay, so going down this list again. Okay, Vucevic. I don't think he's going to the Bucks. Tyson Chandler, D'Angelo Russell, Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie Irving. But basically, I think the guys that are already in Milwaukee are going to be most likely to re-sign. They see the team that the Bucks can build. Okay, they're already living there. So Khris Middleton, I think, is the next best option in terms of re-signing. Okay, I think he's worth about $15 million a year. He might be offered more that. So at this stage, with Middleton around $20 million a year and Kemba around $25 million a year, so that's about $45 million a year. So at this stage, we're going over the luxury tax, but we're allowed to because we're re-signing former players. That's the beauty of re-signing former players. So at this point, we've got Kemba, we've got Khris Middleton, all right? And now we're going down here to the $12 million a year players. All right, so we've got... Sorry. Okay, so maybe not $12 million a year, but we've got Malcolm Brogdon. I forgot to mention Brogdon. Brogdon's a free agent. We need to keep Brogdon. He's one of the best second-round picks that I've ever seen picked up by the Bucks. Great drafting there. It's an example of their great drafting. Okay, they need to re-sign Brogdon, which I think they can. Offer him about $10 million a year. I think he's a pretty undervalued around the league. And then Eric Bledsoe, he's had some injury problems and stuff, but I think he's definitely worth maybe around the $12 million mark. I don't actually have him written down here in my board. So basically we've picked up Kemba Walker, Khris Middleton, Eric Bledsoe, and Malcolm Brogdon in free agency. Okay, I think that's the best the Bucks can do. I think they're actually, come to think of, there is one more roster spot. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, which is 9, 10 for Middleton, 11 for Brogdon, 12 for Bledsoe. We've got the 2 rookies. Okay, so that's so let's just say it's. I think they can definitely get Darius Bazley 30th. I think Bassey could be gone. I don't think it's worth trading up just to get one rookie in the draft. So just take that pick of Bazley, and then take Jarrey Foster. All right, so that's a lot of wing players. All right, but who can play center? All right, who can play center in the guys that I've mentioned? Okay, I think Christian Wood can. I think Ilyasova can. I think Giannis might get beaten up a little bit too much. We need more center talent, which means that I think in the in free agency we need to pick up a good center. Okay, that actually makes me think that perhaps it's because instead of drafting Jarrey Foster, who's just another wing, we need to get another center. So I'll just remind myself about who else could be on the board with at center. All right, a guy like Bruno Fernando could be available in the second round at center. Daniel Gafford could be available. Goga Bitazde, the European big man. Even Marquise Bolden out of Duke. I actually like Tako Fall as well. So there's all these center options with that second Bucks pick. And I think all those guys I just mentioned can provide an impact. Okay. And then in free agency, so that last roster spot, I think you need to sign a guy like Brandon McCoy, who has actually played with the Bucks in the summer league, I believe. He went undrafted last year, but he's a super talented dude. Or draft Kostas Antetoukoumnpo. Getting Giannis's brother would be a huge boon in keeping Giannis. I think Kostas can defend the 5 because he's just got freak length and athleticism. So when I think about can you defend the 5, it's like, can you match up against a guy like Steven Adams or DeMarcus Cousins? The best centers in the league. These are huge guys. Can you stop them getting shots at will? Can you defend a Steven Adams hook shot after he's, done a post move and almost push you out of the way, right? So I think picking up Kostas Antetoukoumnpo or Brandon McCoy, those guys can be picked up for cheap. Come to think of it, that might put them over the cap. That might not be legal because they're going over the cap. So maybe you'd have to sign them before re-signing guys like Brogdon and Middleton and stuff. So basically, to conclude, we've got the Bucks, and then obviously, actually, I forgot to mention, and then guys like DJ Wilson, Divincenzo, and Connaughton and stuff. I think they're not real good impact players, and they're taking up roster spots. Okay, so I would cut them or trade them for picks or something, and then pick up better players in free agency if you can afford it. Okay, sorry to those guys, but I just you've got to get good value players. And it's a cutthroat league, and you've got to win. But that's a pretty awesome rotation. You've got Giannis, you've got Middleton, you've got Ilyasova. I think you can come off the bench at center. You got Brogdon. Like, all these guys can switch really well. Bledsoe can switch. He can probably even got the athleticism to guard the 3. Even he might be able to stay in front of LeBron and still be able to alter shots at the rim, alter jump shots. Tony Snell, he's a solid shooter, just good defender and rebounder. And then the rookies, so Darius Bazley, I think he's a Lamar Odom type. He's kind of like Giannis, he can dish, he can handle the ball, he's very tall, so that means that he can rebound and defend at the rim. And then, picking up drafting a center, like Goga Bitazde is just a big body who can finish in the post. Tako Fall is obviously like a Roy Hibbert type. And he's got some, mid-range game as well. As I mentioned, if you've got a massive plotting center, just don't switch him. Okay. Just the guard has to get over the screen, which, can be tough against 3-pointers. But if you've got such a massive guy, it makes up for it in rim defense and then out rebounding the opposition center on the other end. So let's not discount those huge centers. It's rare to find a human that is big as Tako Fall, and we need to be valuing these guys like that. And then, So, and then picking up, as I mentioned, a center. Even Frank Kaminsky of the Hornets, so it might be a massive migration from the Hornets to the Bucks. Kemba coming over, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist coming over. I forgot to mention him. He's a switchable defender. And then Frank Kaminsky, he'd be a good center on the Bucks too, because he can spread the floor for guys like Giannis and things to go to work. So overall, I think that team would mean that I think they would definitely get in the finals, and they could contend with the Warriors. If the Warriors keep this team together, then I don't think they can be beaten for a while. There is a chance that Durant leaves in free agency. I think if the Wizards can get enough space, I think Durant might come home to the Wizards. That would really improve his reputation in the league if he could bring a championship to Washington. I don't think he'd be considered such a snake, as unfortunately some people do think after he went from the Thunder to the Warriors. DeMarcus Cousins might leave for a bigger contract with some other team. If the Warriors can free the space of John Wall's contract and Ian Mahinmi's contract, this is a low-key thing. They could sign Durant and another max free agent like DeMarcus Cousins. Okay? So, anything can happen in free agency there. And guys, I'd strongly encourage you to watch the Finding Giannis documentary. It was kind of like the inspiration for this video. Giannis is just a once-in-a-generation type player, I think, and he's still young, so the Bucks need to keep him, and the Bucks need to really put strong guys around him so that he'll stay. So thanks for watching. Leave some comments. If you agree, disagree, just let me know. Let's just get the conversation talking about what the Bucks can do this offseason to really improve. Thanks.